Hello, YouTube. Be sure and hit that like and subscribe button and notification bell so that when we have a new video that comes out, you'll be the first to get a hold of it. All right, look at all the tomatoes. I'm going to pick a bunch more. JD's brought me the microphone and he set the camera up. I'm going to tell you a story today. This is kind of hard to believe, but it is absolutely true. It happened about 55 years ago when I was a young fella. I built a kayak out of white pine lumber, 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, 16 feet long, with canvas on it, painted it, two-man kayak. I put lee boards on it to stabilize it, a rudder on the back, foot pedal control, and a small sail. And Randy, who was a military guy, and I got into the Mississippi River in Memphis, Tennessee about 2 o'clock one afternoon, and we headed downstream to Helena, Arkansas, about 100 miles by river, I guess. And it was fall. It was a crazy thing to do. I wouldn't recommend it. As we were going down that river, we had no idea that God was creating a miracle. I've seen a lot of miracles in my life. I'm not a miracle worker, but I've witnessed some miracles. And so it was a beautiful first afternoon. But when it started getting dark and we got ready to park the kayak for the evening and camp out, we realized the current was about 10 miles an hour and riff-raff rock on the side, and kind of hard to get out of a kayak traveling 10 miles an hour. Went through this suck hole like that, just like a bathtub going down. Crazy. It would suck the kayak under. Just missed it 4 or 5 feet. Anyway, we camped that night. Big rain came. Water rose. Kayak was tied 6 feet above, but the river rose 6 feet. Beat the kayak all up, knocked a hole in it. We patched it, headed on down the river. Had a great second day, camped out. And then about the third day, we were going down the river again, and came up a rainstorm that night. And so our little bit of a tent caved in. We got soaking wet. Our gear got wet. Spent half the day with the gear spread out on the side of some rocks trying to dry out. And then we got in and took off again. And the next day, in the afternoon, we camped out, parked on a sandbar, and there we had our dinner. And then that evening, I got diarrhea. I mean, there's diarrhea, and then there is diarrhea. I mean, I must have ate something that came out of Chicago, when we were having our meal, or flushed down a toilet in San Francisco. I don't know where it came from, but it was terrible. I believe it started in Mexico, and I got up and got about 100 feet from the tent that night, and then next time I only made it about 90 feet. Next time I made about 80 feet, and the last time I just barely got out of the tent. I mean, it was terrible. But I was dry. I was empty after that, and I was crawling. Next morning, woke up and you see these little white. We had toilet paper. We had little white spots of toilet paper going on out through the woods, and I was too sick to stand up. I couldn't stand up. My buddy had to pack the kayak all up, and we headed downriver, and I was gone. And so we're going down the river, and a wind comes up, and it's blowing north to south, the direction we were going. I put that sail out. I was in control of the sail and the foot pedals in the back, and I mean, we were slapping the water. It's like we're making up some lost time, all the time we'd lost so far. And we came up to where the Helena, Arkansas bridge was, and we hadn't seen any civilization until then for 4 or 5 days. And here were 2 big barges parked on the side, and we're going to go down past them and try to put in on the bank. But then I heard a whoop, look around behind me, and here comes this barge, this tugboat with about 40 barges coming right down the river, and the channels between the bridge piling and the barges, and it wasn't very wide. And he's about to run over us. And so I told my buddy, when I tell you to, paddle on the left hard as you can. So Where those barges were parked, there's kind of a space between them. We turned slipped that kayak sideways, went right between those barges, and no sooner got between them than the waves hit us like that. And got around, there was a little space between the barge and the back and the rocks, and we got in there. It was close. Now, this has been 4 or 5 days of good weather, bad weather, slowed down, speeded up. That last 6 hours was like, I mean, we must have been going 25 miles an hour. That kayak was just hitting the top of the water like that wind behind us. And so the guy on the barge, he was up on the dock there. He was hollering and said, "Get out of the river. You can't stay here. This private land." I said, "This as far as we're going." So I got one end of the kayak, my buddy got the other, and we headed up the bank with it. Got up to a big flat area up there and set it down, exhausted. And I'd gotten a little strength back, drinking water. And so we climbed the bank, got to the top where the roadway was. And there was a fellow standing there hitchhiking. And as is my habit, I said to him, "Have you heard about Jesus?" And he looked shocked, and he looked past us like that, and he looked back at us, and he looked down, and he says, "Where'd you come from?" I said, "I came from the river down there. In the kayak, we just got out of the river." He just looked very shocked. His eyes got big. He said, I want to hear about Jesus." I said, "You do?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yesterday in St. Louis, an old lady told me about Jesus. Now, I didn't much want to listen, but she told me." And I said, "Man, if I had a Bible." He said, "A Bible?" She gave me a Bible. And he goes down into his gear and he pulls out a Bible. He said, "And she told me that somebody else would come and tell me about Jesus." I said, "Well, we're here. We're going to tell you." And he said, "How'd you get here?" I said, "I told you, in a boat in a river." He started shaking his head. He said, "You know, I had a dream last night. I had a dream that somebody got out of a boat and came and told me about Jesus." And the guy's he's just like he turns white, you know. He's like he's seen a ghost or something. And, of course, I was pretty excited, too. So I started telling him the story of Jesus. I told him that story about the beautiful love story, how God wants his children. He wants to make family. He's looking for people to share his home with, and how he's ready to forgive anybody who'll come to him. And that fellow just began to cry. He's a grown man. He just began to cry. And, of course, I got pretty excited, too. And he said, I want him. I want Jesus. And so he just called on the Lord right there, and then he began to laugh. And so I began to laugh, too. My buddy started laughing. We all stand there on the side of the road laughing. I got so excited I had to run down the bank and back up again a few times just to relieve the tension. And so here we were kind of dancing around on the side of the road laughing, and me running up and down. I'm sure folks thought we were crazy. And I looked pretty bad. Of course, I've been in the river for 5 days, stunk pretty good, so my buddy. And, of course, I'd been sick like that. So it was an amazing rendezvous that God slowed us down, speeded us up, and got us there at just the right moment. We went to make a call for somebody to come pick us up. We came back, he'd caught a ride and was gone. So he was on the side of the road there maybe 5 minutes before we came up. And 5 minutes later he was gone after we talked with him. What would it take to arrange his previous transportation that day, hitchhiking, getting out right there at that spot, standing there a couple minutes, us coming up the bank, the barge coming down, the tugboat coming down behind us, scaring us out of the river, the speedy wind that day, slowed down the day before, all the diarrhea keeping me from getting early start, all of that arranged just perfectly. So we rendezvoused at the same moment. The old lady giving him a Bible and telling him somebody would come, and him having a dream saying somebody came out of the river. Well, that's the way God does things. Sometimes, not all the time, but he does. And I've seen some miracles like that. So I want to tell you, God's alive. He's doing well. And I've got more tomatoes to pick here. My wife cans them. She makes tomato sauce, tomato paste. She makes spaghetti sauce. And so I got to get them picked because she's out picking blueberries. And when she gets through, she's coming back to can these tomatoes. So see you next time.